friends, welcome to my November wrap-up and December TBR. We waste no time today, let's go. The first book I read in November was The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I was expecting this to be something like The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, kind of like a YA classic. It's about this girl named Bella, and every year her and her mom go on vacation to this beach house and they meet up with family friends. And I thought that the concept was cool. The title is such an interesting way to describe that time in your life when like you go from being young to being a young adult. I didn't end up liking it very much. It didn't have anything going for it that Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants did. There were some similarities, but it just wasn't anything like I was hoping. So I gave that one 2 whole stars. The second book I finished in November was The Scarecrow and His Servant by Philip Pullman. Philip Pullman is the author of the His Dark Materials trilogy. I've read The Golden Compass and I totally loved it, and so I found a couple smaller books of his. Didn't really know what to expect. I just found them on a shelf at Goodwill. In an exciting turn of events, this has become one of my favorite books of all time. It's about this scarecrow who comes to life. He's like this very intelligent scarecrow. He's one of those people, or scarecrows, where he can look at you with a wink and a smile and somehow he signs you up for eternal servitude and you're excited about the idea. It was kind of like a Brothers Grimm fairy tale. I was laughing through this whole book. It's so good. If you and I have similar tastes in books, this is your next book. I would recommend this for anyone who loves old fairy tales or if you like Philip Pullman's work, because it is a charming combination of both. I gave it 5 stars. So the third book that I read in November was Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo, which is the third book in the Grishaverse. I was calling it the Grisha trilogy, but then like on Goodreads in the parentheticals it said the Grishaverse, so I don't know what that means. This was the final book in a trilogy, and it's set in this land kind of like old Russia, and it's based on old Russian fairy tales and folklore and stuff, and I was so pleasantly surprised by this series. It was so good. The third book, in my opinion, was a good ending. If you want to know more, I think I wrote a pretty extensive Goodreads review. I gave that one 4 stars. I love this series because it's so unexpected. There are so many things done and so many new ideas that I've never heard of before or seen used in a story before. So that was refreshing, and then also it was hilarious because Leigh Bardugo wrote it. And then the 4th book that I read in November was To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I was realizing that I haven't read very many classics this year. It's been a lot of YA, pretty much just YA. A lot of small books, so I wanted to read something more challenging. So I listened to this one on audiobook, and it was such a good audiobook. I'm very picky about audiobooks, but this was a great one. I actually can't imagine reading the book any other way because I wouldn't have thought to voice the characters like they did in the audiobook, and it gave them a lot more character and depth that I don't think I would have thought of on my own. It was a really good book. I loved it because it's one of those stories that has a really meaningful purpose in telling you all this, but it doesn't shove it in your face and say like, this is right, this is wrong. It just tells you like, this is what's happening, how do you feel about that? Definitely worth reading, and it was really fun to read on audiobook. It was very, very well written. It's so funny because whenever I read a book like that, I feel like I can never go back to any other style of writing because it's just so worthwhile. Every sentence is meaningful and everything serves a purpose. If you're told something about a character, it's literally to help you know that character more. It's not just a side note, and it's not something you're gonna forget. Beautifully, beautifully written. And I loved the message of it too. I gave that one 5 whole stars. I had 2 5-star books this month. That was really good. So those are the only books that I finished, but as I am not very wise, I started a lot of books towards the end of the month. So now it's time for the December TBR. I realize the unlikelihood that I will actually finish, but just for fun and kind of just as like a word of caution to anyone who thinks it would be a great idea to start reading 9 books at the same time. Let me change your mind on that. So currently I am reading Emma by Jane Austen. Going really well so far. It's super funny reading about the matchmaker rather than the matches. This is like my top priority because it's the most fun to read. I love that it's challenging my vocabulary. I feel like with a lot of YA books, they're easy to read and so you get through them really quickly, but then there's not a lot of value sometimes. Whenever that happens, I like to go pick a classic and reminisce about the good old days. I am also reading Welcome to Night Vale. Don't poke me in the face. This is by Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Craner. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I don't remember how I found it. I just stumbled upon it one day and it was like the best thing I'd ever heard. So this book is like exactly like the podcast if you've heard that before, but there's a lot of plot to it and stuff. I find it hilarious. I don't know why. I don't know how they come up with this stuff. I'm also currently reading the 5th Fablehaven book. I really want to finish this series. I don't know why I picked yesterday to do it. I'm also currently reading Divergent. I've already read this, so I'm just rereading it for fun. I really just need to put this one away. I've already read it. I'm also currently reading a early review copy of Zenith by Lindsay Cummings and Sasha Alsberg. You've probably heard about this if you watch BookTube a lot, because this was written by a couple of booktubers. The premise sounds cool. It's supposed to be about like space pirates or something. I'm a little ways into it and I think it's interesting so far. I'm wondering what's gonna happen as I keep going, how I'm gonna feel about it. Updates will be given as I progress on Goodreads. Oh my goodness, I forgot to mention. I'm also currently reading Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. To be fair, my sister and I have been reading this off and on for about a year, so it's not like a very current thing except for the fact that we've just recently picked it up again. So yeah, we read it aloud. It's quite fun. Okay, so how many books am I currently reading? 6? We've also got Headshot by Matthew McAndrew. So this is a debut novel by an author who I know. It's cool so far and I'm excited to keep going. It's about this group of friends who find themselves in the midst of a murder. That's exciting. I'm excited to keep reading and I have a feeling that by the time this video is up, I will be done with it. So if you want to know my thoughts, go on Goodreads. I also have to mention that the cover is one of those really nice covers that's really soft and it's like an in-between of a paperback and a hardcover. I am also trying to read The Language of Thorns by Leigh Bardugo. To my knowledge, I believe that this is a collection of fairy tales from the Grisha trilogy universe. I could be wrong. No, it does say Grishaverse. I stand firm in my assessment. So I'm excited about that because I enjoyed the series so much, but I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get to it. To be fair, it is quite small. I'm including this because it's a library book, so literally there's an expiration date hanging over my head, or a due date, I should say. Something I also put on the hold at the library, which was not a smart idea, was Warcross by Marie Lu. I went to the event for this when she came to Seattle, so that was fun hearing about it, and the cover totally messes with my mind. I think it's the coolest thing ever. It reminds me of plastic jewelry. This sounds really interesting, and it reminds me of a James Dashner book I read. Yeah, it's about like virtual reality gaming, and this sounds similar and it sounds really interesting. The last book that I'm sharing at the moment is Carve the Mark by Veronica Roth. I have mixed feelings about this one already because I've heard different reviews from different people, so I'm not exactly sure what to think. Because I loved Divergent so much, I'm really interested in this book. I want to at least check it out. The only question is whether that will happen in the month of December. I'm glad we did this because it really helps me put things into perspective when I stack up all the books like this and say, okay, Lily, read them all in December. Good joke. Yeah, so like I said, this is meant to be taken as a caution. Don't ever do this. Be sure to subscribe so you're here next month to find out what happens. If you liked the video, like the video. If you have a bad habit of starting more books than you can possibly finish, let me know in a comment. We can give each other some advice and some help, I think. I've just been so excited about reading lately that I've taken on way too much. Dang it, books. Why you gotta be this way? It's actually kind of funny to rewatch these at the end of the month and see what actually happened. May you have a wonderful day, and you'll see me next time. Goodbye.